What is going on, guys? How we doing? Dynasty Degens, episode 56. We are talking combine shifts today. Probably some off-season news as well. We're talking about combine shifts and off-season thrifts, guys that you might want to pick up, guys that you really know are going to go. Or we got some news today. Obviously, Christian Kirk going over there. Dan, how do you feel about that move? You like that for Stroud? Definitely with Tank Dell being out.
I do. I really like that. I think they got a jump on the free agency by acquiring Kirk, and it gives them another weapon. Hopefully something they can maximize on Stroud's rookie contract.
Yeah, I mean, Tank is definitely not going to see the field majority of the year, if not the entire year. He's looking at a Nick Chubb, like the original Nick Chubb injury that he had. So it was like definitely towards the end of the year. Unfortunately, that's not going to be a quick recovery. I think he just had his second surgery.
Yep.
So, I mean, it makes me feel better about Stroud this year for sure. I just feel like they're gonna find little pieces. They're gonna be able to throw some ancillary pieces in there to boost his value, especially in Dynasty. I think everyone was really soft on him last year, and he's one of my risers. He's somebody that I want to scoop up. I've been buying. I teared off of Burrow because Burrow actually has much more value than Stroud currently after that last year, even though I think Stroud as a prospect is probably hand in hand. I think I have those guys back to back in my rankings. So if you can get a plus on Stroud to move off Burrow, I think I'm fine with that, especially with the way that the Bengals are just stripping down, and we got two unhappy top tier wide receivers over there. I don't really know how that's going to play out. They're going to figure out a way, but I mean, they can't keep tagging guys left and right. So it's going to be tough. But before we get into everything, I want to introduce a new guest to the show, somebody that is relatively new to podcasting in general. This guy I met in the space, and he's hungry. He's got a method right now that I'm probably going to talk to him a little bit about. More analytics side, but that's what I need in my life. So me and my buddy Matt are probably going to get really close. So this is Matt at Fantasy. Sorry. So it's at FantasyFit.io. Matt, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys having me on. So I just a little bit about myself. So by day, I'm a software developer, and then obviously here fantasy football enthusiast. So I've been working to sort of just understand fantasy better, and so with my software skills, I built an app called FantasyFitness.io, and that's what I've been working on to sort of pull together player insights, team insights, and roster insights, but do it through an analytical framework. And just excited to talk it up with you guys here, talk shop, and talk Dynasty, and kind of tell you guys a little bit how I use the analytics too to make some of my decisions.
Have you been able to take the rookie profile of these guys so far, and have you been able to put them in your system and kind of figure out the analytics side of some of these guys that aren't quite playing yet, but you have enough information to compile to actually kind of figure that out a little bit?
Yeah, so I have been working on what I'm calling a prospect score. It's one of the algorithms that I'm working on at Fantasy Fitness, and that's essentially trying to measure a prospect's hit rate and chance of success at the NFL level. I have taken all of their college production, and I generally look at like a weighted average over the last 2 years, and combine that with their athletic profiles. So now that they just went to the combine, we have all those awesome metrics that just came in. And so combining their athletic measurables with their college production and looking at that mostly on like a per game basis, just to sort of normalize the data and make sure that, it's fairly, reliable, and then doing different ways to discount conferences and things like that. It's not a perfect system. It's not a perfect model. I'm working through it right now to sort of understand these guys, but it does help sort of see tier breaks in different guys and also see some surprises with certain guys, So I think with if we want to talk about the running backs real quick, I'm happy to sort of banter on that for a second, but you have your Ashton Gentry at the top, and then Genty at the top, and then you have, I think we've all probably agree that like Hampton is probably the number 2. There's some debate, but I think he's probably in the 2 spot, and then but maybe a slight tier break there. And then you look at Judkins and Caleb Johnson. That's what the data in my prospect model is sort of showing, is you have Gentry, Hampton, Judkins, and Caleb Johnson. And then there's, that you start to see some tier breaks and things like that. So I guess I don't want to talk too long about it without you sort of.
No, that's good, man. I like
one example, I guess, of the data. Yeah. To your question.
Yeah. And it is nice to get that side of stuff. I'm a tape guy. I grind tape, and I've been doing that for a really long time. And that's usually how I assess talent. I have my own system where I'm going back. I'm looking at tape from the last 3 years. I want to look at the evolution, the system, conferences, everything that goes into play. And then I kind of take the analytics after that and I put them together and I make a little baby. And that,
and I think I do basically that, but just maybe flip it in reverse.
Sure. Yeah. And I dig it. But you talked running backs, and that's what we're going to talk about in nauseum today. I think that's what people want to hear about. I think that's exactly what every pod is doing right now. But it is what it is, because this class is probably the strongest running back class we've seen since we saw classes. We think about classes. I think really the class that sticks out to me is that JT, Akers, Dobbins, Swift class. Like we were looking at that class as in every one of these guys is going to be a set it, forget it RB1. And the value here, we are looking at obviously Judkins, and then you can make a case for anybody after that. People have Travion as 2. Hampton is my 2, but I don't fault anybody for kind of mix and matching those guys. Keyshawn and Travion almost hand in hand at this point. And then we have this tier of, guys that have tested well in the combine who we're going to talk about, and then guys that didn't do well. Like we could talk about Caleb for a little while there and his 40 and how that affects his value. But Dane, did you pull up the numbers that we're talking about for all the combines that we're taking? So obviously Hampton, Travion, and Keyshawn all tested very well. Like the RAS scores are there. These guys did very well. I think they are probably going to jump in rookie drafts, especially with, we're talking about the wide receivers that didn't test. Obviously people waiting for their pro day. Waiting for your pro day is fine and good, and a lot of people are doing it now. But I think in modern NFL terms, like you probably are going to get pushed back, and you're probably going to lose out on some money if you don't start testing. Because, we're seeing top tier assets, especially this year. And it's like you're not getting current footage and you're looking at them from a tape perspective. It's called prospect fatigue. And when you get prospect fatigue, you look at these guys and you're like, okay, I've seen this many plays with him, and I've seen him do this and I've seen him do that. And you almost feel like you're looking at ways to like assess their talent in a negative way. Like you're looking at a player after a while and you're saying, okay, like I know that he does this good, that good, but what does he do bad? And then that's what happened with Chase. Chase was dropping balls in preseason, and people were like discounting Chase. And then Garrett Wilson came along and he was jumping to catch every pass. And everyone's like, Garrett Wilson jumps to catch a pass. I mean, we do it every year. We look at these prospects and we say they're the top guys, and then they don't test. And then you're like, well, he doesn't do this right. He doesn't do that right. So I think guys like Tatoa McMillan and then obviously the quarterbacks are all going to fall in rookie drafts. But let's get into these running backs. Let's talk about Hampton. Obviously is somebody that I think we're going to talk about. We didn't see Genty for, I think he probably could have tested. I think he should have, but at this point he's a set and forget it. I think he's going 1 as far as any rookie draft or in the real NFL. Although I do hear rumblings that Hampton could jump him a little bit, but I don't know if I would recommend that personally.
Well, Herm said that last week too, on the podcast, where he said that he thought that the break between Genty and Hampton was relatively small. I think I remember him saying something.
I think that's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of agree with that too.
Yeah. If we're talking about it from a prospect perspective, I think Genty definitely is a little more explosive. He has that agility. He's going to, they're two different running backs, like there's entirely two different skill sets that we're going to assess right now. And Hampton is more of like a bruiser. He's got that body type. He is definitely more of like I'm going to use my body weight. I'm going north south on you. He does have that ability to break through, and he has a burst for sure. But Genty is a little more well-rounded when it comes to agility and just the overall explosiveness. But that doesn't mean that he's going to be a better fantasy back by any means. Like
And
we
it's
can
not gonna
see
be a big deal.
Yeah, and in the system and everything that these guys are doing, it is all dependent on, like, if we're looking at, Hampton to the Steelers and Genty to the Raiders. I think I'm going to take the guy on the Steelers personally.
Or Hampton to the Cowboys.
Hampton to the Cowboys, set it, forget it. I mean, you're going to see a shift if that's the case, and the running back landing spots are juicier towards the end. But if we do see Hampton, Trevion, Keyshawn, and then we drop down and we see Caleb, Ollie Gordon, that whole group is going to come in to the NFL. Who are the running backs that you want no part of in the NFL right now? Dane, who are you trying to get off your roster? And I think the obvious ones are like Tyrone Tracy and Rashad White, but who is that you think are going to get wasted as far as this draft cycle goes?
So I
mean, it's going to happen. We're going to see at least 5 running backs that are starters right now that won't be starters in about 6 months, 5 months.
Yeah, and I think most notably, we're going to be looking at somebody like Chase Brown and I think Kyron Williams. I think both of those guys either get surpassed by somebody drafted with good capital, or there's somebody else that comes in that is going to steal some of their shares.
Yeah. And Matt, what do you think as far as any guy that you're holding currently is a really good sell that might not be so obvious? If you know the landing spots, if you know how the draft cycle goes, there's always a couple surprises. There's always some guys that you want to move off of. Yeah. Who doesn't feel safe to you?
I would say Isaiah Pacheco is maybe not an obvious one, but he seems a little vulnerable there in Kansas City. He struggled obviously last year, but a lot of that was injury based. But he is also a 7th round draft pick, I believe, or maybe undrafted free agent. I can't remember there, but so just he seems a little vulnerable. They were ranked pretty low in terms of their rushing efficiencies last year, Kansas City, that is. So I could see them trying to maybe do something there to upgrade the backfield. I also think maybe this one, I don't know, DeAndre Swift, as much as I like him in Chicago, I don't know. Like if there's rumblings, I've seen mocks with like Genty going to Chicago, and I think that would be a terrible draft.
I mean, everyone is saying
real NFL draft. I don't know why you would do that, but let's say he does go there, then obviously Genty's going to be balling out. And what does that mean for Swift? I don't know. I mean, he's going to be in that pass catching role, and he's just always been one of those guys that you never feel satisfied with him. Like he always just leaves you like wanting more with his like athletic profile.
Yeah. Swift is definitely gone, especially with the signing of Ben Johnson. Mm-hmm. I mean, Ben pretty much blacklisted Swift the first time they had a little relationship going,
right.
Like we didn't, he got traded on Ben's watch. He got moved. And the playing time was very frustrating, especially during that time period.
Oh yeah, I had him and I was frustrated as an owner. I remember it well.
Yeah, I remember him coming in for maybe 2 or 3 series in a game, and it was like he was healthy, it was fine, and it just didn't. There was clearly bad blood there, and I think that the writing on the wall, especially with Ben going there. But Yeah, I mean, they're in a great spot. Obviously, they're addressing their needs through trades and free agency and stuff like that when it comes to the O-line. So I think their move is a running back in maybe the first round. I mean, I always was like, the NFL is not going to take running backs in the first round like that. We saw in past drafts like the Breece Halls and in these guys that, you could wait even 4 years ago, 3 years ago. It was like a second rounder was a top tier running back. And now the shift is happening where, these guys are going mid first, late first. If one goes, I think everyone's going to kind of panic a little bit, and we might see 3 first round running backs. Maybe that's just at this point after that combine, would it be shocking to you if we see Genty, Hampton, and Travion in the first round? I mean, I would be shocked. I think I would expect that at this point.
Yeah.
We need to see some good pro days. We need to see, obviously the quarterbacks are still going to go, but if we see, I don't know, Tatora, McMillan, I think these guys are still going in the first, but there's a very real possibility that these running backs, a panic will set, much like in dynasty drafts, where you look at the board and you're saying, we're going to not get a guy. We're not going to get our guy if we don't jump on him a little early. Running backs that I want no part of right now. I'm going to say obviously Swift, Pacheco, any third year guy, Brian Robinson, I think is donezo. I think the team itself could maybe not go high on a guy, and they could still probably replace Brian Robinson to a degree.
Yeah. What about somebody like Pollard?
I think, I mean, they got Tajay there. They're probably going to, Pollard just signed a 2-year contract, a 3-year contract?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think he might be safe because of his contract. He's on a 3-year, $21.8 million deal that makes him an unrestricted free agent in 2027.
Yeah. The Patriots are interesting too. Ramondre signed a massive contract. I think he signed a 3 to 4 year contract. And I still think he could get drafted over. I still think that there's a real possibility. I don't even think I think this class is so good at the running back position that people are going to overlook their contracts right now. And they might just swoop in and grab a guy while they still can. And they're just going to say, all right, we'll let him sit on a rookie deal and figure out a way. I don't know.
Well, that's it. The depth is here that, usually we try to play draft capital as an answer of where players are going to go and usage that they might be. We try to be predictive like that. And this is a class that, you might have a round 5 running back that comes in and steals a job. Another guy that I think you can worry about losing a spot is James Cook. And I just saw Vince, thanks for the comment. I think Hampton to the Bears, that could be something fun. I don't know if that'll happen, but that's a pretty interesting landing spot for sure.
Yeah, we got James Cook is definitely looking for a new contract right now. I don't think he gets it. I don't think he's going to get the money that he wants right now, especially after Barkley signing that deal. I think every running back on the cusp is probably going to be like, I want that money. They're not getting that money, man. Nobody's going to, especially right now. I don't think James Cook he's not going to get what he wants. And they're probably going to have to either draft his replacement or sign him to a team friendly deal at this point. And I don't think he's going to like that. So I think he could easily be at least.
Ray Davis looked pretty good last year too, in limited, opportunity. I'm not exactly sure what my evaluation is on Ray Davis yet. He's an older running back. He came out late. But I don't know. There were some games last year. I definitely remember some highlights where he put up, he looked decent. So we'll see how that plays out.
He's like a step up from a Jag. I feel like he could definitely have some tread on him, but I wouldn't feel good with him as more than my RB3 on a team. like a third down, kind of clean him up kind of guy. But of this class, we saw some risers. Obviously, Bashul Tootin. Everyone's been tooting this guy. I've been pretty familiar with his game. I've been watching his tape for a while. I was at that BC game. I'm actually a BC ticket holder out here in Boston, and he was the only thing to watch in that game, to be honest, obviously. But I got to see him up close and personal. He has more than just a fast guy. He has that skill set of being able to, spatial awareness. He can do some defensive manipulation. Like he has that shiftiness to him. And I think he has good vision as well. So I think it's not just, hey, he ran fast at the combine, we should boost this guy up in value. There's a lot to like about him. Where does he rise up for you guys after that combine, after that 40 and agility score? What was his RAS score, Dane? I want to say it was like a 9.
His RAS score was a 9.24.
Yeah.
Is what I found. And I believe that was on Math Bomb that I found today.
Yep. Math Bomb. Follow that. He's a dog in the space. But yeah, where does he rise up to for you guys? Does he break for either one of you? I'll start with you, Dane. Does he break into a top 5 in this class for you?
Yeah, like I think he's gone from everybody's sleeper a month ago to showing out at the combine, and he can definitely be RB5 of this class. I think for what he's done in Indy, he can easily be a second round pick. I think he'll be a day 2 pick at the very least.
Yeah, I have him right there too. Yeah, I have him right there at 5. Give or take, obviously, but 5 or 6, like he's right in that like third tier. I guess you could kind of think of it as. I really was impressed with his athletic measurables, and then if you look at his production too, I mean, he only played 24 games in college, but in those 24 games, he had 50 receptions. 320 receiving yards. That was good for 6.4 yards per reception. And then on the rushing side, I mean, he was a monster. Averaged 5.7 yards per attempt, over 2,000 rushing yards on 356 attempts, and 25 touchdowns. Now, touchdowns are one of those metrics that isn't sticky, so it's like putting too much weight into touchdowns is something that I don't typically do in my process. Really, I don't put much weight at all. But if you look just strictly at the production and the efficiency metrics, he's a beast.
Yeah, I mean, I think day 2 is a lock at this point, So would you guys take him over Caleb? Like,
No, I don't think I would necessarily do that, just because I like the size that Caleb offers at, I think, 225 or so. Whereas, Tootin's closer to like 205, 210 in that range. So I think just to take the pounding that, you're gonna at the NFL level, I'm gonna probably still lean into the larger.
I mean, to be honest though, 205 is, I feel like you're safe as a running back in the NFL right now.
Modern day, it's moving that way. It feels that way. Yeah, I'll say that.
Yeah. We're looking at Gibbs at 205. Obviously, A-Chain is not even cracking 200, I don't think, at this point. He says he's over, but I don't know I think he's put 190 at best. What are you going to say, Dan?
I think like I'm there where I'm taking Tootin over Caleb. I think he has a more wide variety of a skill set. I think he's a better pass catcher. He has to work on his pass blocking, but the explosiveness is there, and the willingness to grind and fight through tackles and gain that yardage is kind of what puts me over top from Caleb. Not a slight to Caleb, but I think Caleb kind of just takes what he's given. He's very smooth, but he lacks that burst to really get through the holes once they're there, and kind of leaves me wanting more when I watch the tape on him.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb is Najee Harris in a nutshell. when I look at him, when I look at his tape, when I look at his prospect profile in general, I see Najee. You know, I see a guy that is going to be able to get 20 touchdowns a year and probably plot his way to 1,000 yards. I don't think he's going to give you more than that, but it's going to be, I think he's definitely like going to be a very respectable RB2 in the NFL. There's no long speed there. Obviously we saw his 40. I think, well, he has a decent, he can get up to a good speed. We saw him get to a nice speed last year in a couple games, but you know, I mean, he's never going to be like that burner guy. He's never going to be a Tootin where he's just going to fly through the hole. It's going to be more of like it's going to be a Najee. He's going to like probably carry the rock for like 4.5 yards, 5 yards, whatever, and eventually break out for a couple of big ones, but be a really good goal line back. And I mean, that's fine. I'm fine with that. He would probably be would he be the RB1 of the class last year? I think he probably would be at this point. I think any of these guys in the top 8 would be the RB1.
Yeah, I would have put Johnson over Benson and Brooks if, you know.
I think you guys are forgetting Bucky Irving though.
Oh, Bucky, that's right.
So
I mean, I love Bucky, and I get Bucky, but like I was as high as I could be on Bucky last year. But I think at this point last year, I was not putting Bucky over.
That's right. When they're both going into their drafts, it's an argument that you could have Caleb there.
You can have the conversation now after they've produced, and that's kind of an unfair conversation because if you're putting class to class, you have to remember that class that's already played. You have to look at it as they haven't played yet, and the value there is would I have put Caleb over Bucky last year? Probably. And another guy that obviously rose dramatically in the combine that I think we're going to see rise up rookie boards as well as Degens. I mean, he had as good of a combine as possible. Do you have his combine up, or can you pull that up for me?
Yeah, so we scored a 4.4340 and his RAS was a 9.78. So very high. Like he is an athletic freak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Matt, have you looked at him from an analytics profile yet? Have you broken down anything as far as Degens goes?
Yeah, I did, and he kind of, based on like how things are shaking out so far, he's kind of in that, I guess you call it maybe like the 5th tier. He's kind of coming in around guys like Martinez in Miami, and also not from a profile playing style, but just how he grades out in terms of like the tier he's kind of falling in. Martinez, and then Gordon, Ollie Gordon, we talked about him a little bit. He, fell obviously with some of his testing and how he did at the combine, and he's kind of in that 5th tier now. So I kind of have Martinez, Ollie Gordon, and Degens kind of in that 5th tier behind guys like Devin Neal, Sampson from Tennessee, and Scatabo. They're kind of in that 4th tier.
I think people are forgetting Sampson, and I think that's going to be nice for anybody that's doing rookie drafts. The fact that he couldn't test, I mean, he's very good. He's definitely, I have Sampson probably like right where Caleb Johnson is. I think those guys are like right hand in hand as far as where I value them. Maybe not where I'm going to take them, but it's funny when people are like, what are your rankings? And I'm like, these are how I value them. And then they think that means that's how I would take them in a rookie draft. And I can't stress it enough that how I value players doesn't mean that's how I'm going to take them in a draft. Like you can't go 1, 2, 3, 4 and just take them, like you couldn't have taken Ladd McConkey at the 103 last year, even though that's probably like in the range of maybe where he could have gone, give or take. And it's tough to do that. But that's how you capture the value, right? Like, is if you can see
a guy might be in a little bit of a higher tier, or that's how, from the film and the metrics, but that's not where they're being drafted in these rookie drafts, right? Like I know like Loveland is a guy that looks like he could be a great value, or Fannin for that matter, right? Because everybody's going to go for Warren at the end of the first or early second, and maybe there's not a great value there in terms of the cost versus what you're going to get when you can get a younger guy like a Loveland or a Fannin who's got the athletic, crazy production, obviously at a smaller school, but, had just Star Wars numbers over there at Bowling Green, and then has the athletic measurables. Now there was that clip of him like not being able to push the sled at the combine or whatever, and that looked pretty bad. But I mean, assuming he can get good coaching, and he is 240 pounds, which is kind of that threshold for tight ends, like you can capture more value by taking a stab on a guy like Loveland or Fannin as opposed to drafting Warren. And I think that's kind of the point that you're trying to make, is like capture the value. Yes, that's not where these guys are going, and you're not going to take them in that order. And that's where value exists. And that's where you can capture that value because of the upside.
Exactly. Yeah. We are going to get into wide receivers and tight ends in just a second. We are going to kick it over to our sponsor. It is Fast Draft. Podfather is going to break down the Origins draft for you, and then I'm going to give you the code for that if you guys want to start that up. 1 second.
Rookie. It's all about rookie talk in fantasy football right now. So why not go use all that knowledge to do something other than a mock draft? Chris Jimino won $8,000 with just 2 teams last year, and each draft took 5 minutes. That's pretty good ROI. You can start doing rookie drafts for money today on Fast Draft. The Origins tournament is live. It is the place to go and monetize your knowledge of rookies, and use your favorite player profiler host promo code for a $25 deposit match. Now let's go start drafting faster.
Yeah, so if you guys want to kick it over to Fast Draft at any point, download the app, get in there, and then when you sign up, you can look at the actual promo code. Our promo code is Degens. So if you pop that in there, you'll get $25 matched up in your account, and then you can go draft some rookies. So it's a pretty good deal over there. But let's kick it over to, I know we just segued into tight ends. We can talk about tight ends a little bit as far as value goes. We did see some bad testing for guys that I probably was a little higher on. You did talk about Fannin a little bit there, and that sled, I did post that on X about his sledding and the way that he was pushing that thing, and I was just like, oh man, I'm still in on him at cost. I think he's probably going to go in the late second, early third at this point. And I love this class for tight ends. I think there's a lot of gems, a lot of people that people aren't talking about. But I'm even in the hop right there. Warren is up there. Obviously, he's going a little higher than I would like, but Loveland is still in the second. We're going to see Gaston in there as well. What in the combine did you guys see that really spoke to you a little bit as far as tight ends go?
So I think Fannin coming in and hitting that weight requirement that we were looking at was a big deal. Everybody was kind of worried that he was a smaller tight end where landing spot is already going to be an issue for him. Wondering what kind of a scheme he's going to be in. Is he going to be able to play as a traditional tight end? Is he going to have to play a wide on most of his snaps, or is he going to just be a big slot? He still met his RAS thresholds, and he was, that 40 time is a little bit scary. I would have liked to see that a little bit faster from him.
Yeah. But did Loveland do anything, like as far as what you saw to move him? Because I'm seeing a lot of talk on the spaces that Loveland might be jumping in value over somebody like Warren. Anybody on here thinking that way?
No, I think for me, I still have Warren as my tight end one comfortably.
Yeah. I know that you got into it a little bit, but Matt, how do you feel about the tight ends currently? In like your analytics side of things, like how do you have them ranked as of right now?
Loveland comes in at the top, just because his age adjust, when you sort of adjust for his age, he's only 20. I think he's 21 or 20. Fannin too gets a bump for his younger age, and then that meeting that weight threshold was also sort of key. Warren, he sort of gets the opposite treatment in that he's older and he gets an age discount in my model that's sort of applied to him because he's 22 going on 23. And if you look at his production before this year, and we can debate why he had the production or the lack of production, I should say, that he had for the first 4 years that he was in college, and then why he did so well this last year. He's the most interesting prospect to me, and I think the risk, in some ways, the riskiest because of how little he produced and how he didn't really do much or wasn't able to sort of get ahead of Theo Johnson and the guy down in Jacksonville. I'm forgetting his name.
Well,
right
I mean,
now.
Theo
Bretton
Johnson
Strange.
Theo Johnson is a dog though, so I don't blame
No,
him
that's
for that
true.
at all. I mean,
No,
he's a big old dog, so it's really. Did I say Theo Johnson's a dog? Theo Johnson's a dog. That's my boy. Dane knows my love for Theo.
I do like Theo, and I actually like outside of his actual like football stuff. I like his story and stuff too. But I think for me, going back to Warren, it was more about lack of production and then this monster fit, super senior year. And like the model, like my model in particular, doesn't like that, right? It's kind of like, well, why now are you so good at 22? And it's just hard, I think, in some ways to evaluate him. But I know in general, tight ends are an enigma, right? This gets talked about a lot in the fantasy spaces. It's really hard to evaluate tight end. And so for that reason, I think because of his draft capital, I think he's still, he's going to be up there in terms of the model. But in terms of my rankings, I'd say Loveland and Fannin, I think, just has a lot more upside. I just don't know that Warren has maybe quite the upside. And this is just a personal opinion, but that's kind of how I see it. And that's how the model sort of breaks it out, is it's Loveland and Fannin, and then, Warren. And a lot of that has to do with his age and his lack of production before this year.
Yeah, I mean, I get that from a tape guy. I look at his tape. I see somebody that is very physical. He's gifted, but I still have a tough time buying into somebody at that price tag when they haven't produced until they were the only one there. You know what I mean? Like I'm a strong believer that you are going to produce regardless of who you're sharing the field with. Like, I joke around, Theo Johnson is one of the best tight ends in the league, and that's, obviously an overstatement, but I think he is definitely an underappreciated guy in the league. But, Bretton Strange is good. They're both fine guys, but if you're somebody that's going to break the bank and essentially vault yourself to first round tight end talent, and I would have to imagine you're going to outplay these guys throughout your Penn State career, right? Like you're going to at least like show out. I think he had the same production as Johnson the year that he was coming out, like leaving. So like they match production, but if you're this good, I want you just taking over the field and being like the guy, like I don't want excuses that you were sharing the field with Bretton Strange, so your production wasn't as good. I think that these top guys should not be paired up with Bretton Strange and all of a sudden not have good production. He should not be the reason.
Right. So this kind of gives you shades of Dalton Kincaid, right? We were all enamored with him last year and he flew up draft boards, but he only really had one big year. If you're going to be a generational tight end, you're going to see that production like Brock Bowers had.
Exactly.
Well, that's the thing about Dynasty right now, is everyone's chasing the next Brock Bowers. Everyone is looking at tight end prospects as they don't want to miss this guy. They don't want to miss that guy. And that's kind of the sickness when it comes to it. These tight ends are always overvalued. Pitts was worth 4 first at one point in time, the unicorn prospect. And that has nothing to do with what we're talking about right now. But the ultimate tight end prospect, especially when most people play in 0.75 TEP leagues, that's what they're chasing. That's what they want. They want that guy that can be, putting up 25 points a game for you. But I don't think Tyler Warren is that guy. I don't think he's somebody that you should be taking over any of the top 5 running backs or the top 3 wide receivers in this class.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, I think too with Warren, he's like he does a lot of different things in the formations. Like he does a lot of things out of the backfield, and that has me concerned too, right? It's like some people see that as, oh, he's more dynamic, and he's he's a halfback and he's a tight end, and to me, it's like I don't know. That's more of a red flag, I guess, in some ways to me that he's getting schemed open in these different ways, and he's being used more as a fancy halfback or something like that, and a tight end. He's a good blocker, but I guess I'm just not going to have a lot of him at cost. And I will, let's say like Loveland goes to the Broncos. He's been getting mocked to the Broncos at 20. You get Loveland paired up with Bo Nix in a Sean Payton offense. Like, give me that all day over whatever Tyler Warren's going to give me. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how I feel.
Yeah, I get that. And that's the thing. Like, people can talk about draft capital when it comes to the tight end, but like that draft capital to me, when it comes to tight ends, means nothing. I don't care. I am totally fine with a 3rd round tight end in a great spot over a 1st round tight end any day of the week. It's really, we're going to see it time and time again every year. The draft capital means nothing, especially in the tight end position. Like, you're going to be on the field. You take a guy that can't block very well, like Kincaid, and you give him good draft capital, and look at him now. I think he's fading off as far as, I don't know. He might even get drafted over in the next 2 classes. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with him, but it happens fast with tight ends. You fall out of favor and you're schemed out of the entire offense. I mean, he wasn't even going up against, he had Khalil Shakir and the ghost of Amari Cooper, and he wasn't even demanding any targets in that offense. Not to say that the target competition is the only reason, but I'm looking at it, and he made no adjustments to the way that defenses transitioned to him, and they changed the way they played him, because once you have that rookie tape, the league's going to adjust to you. And if you can't adjust back, then you're probably going to get faded out of the game plan. So, anyway, we're going to talk about wide receivers now. I think there's only so much tight end talk people can handle. We have the tight end whisperer, Coop, on next week, so we're going to hold off on a lot of this tight end talk right now. But let's talk about Tet McMillan and Ibuka not testing. Do you think that does anything to their draft stock right now? Like, as far as, I know that rookie draft people feel a certain way. I know that Tet McMillan was hot two weeks ago. He was all that people were talking about. They were like, Tet McMillan is clear-cut wide receiver 1 in this class. He is the one that you want to grab. I would take him over any running back in the class. Like, I was hearing a lot of different talk about everything when it came down to him, and it's cooled off, right? Like, we're seeing that people are feeling a certain way. And it's probably lack of testing and lack of, current events when it comes to the prospects. Did he fade out in as far as the rankings go for either one of you guys?
I think he had more of a slide by missing the combine than Egbuka did, because you're right. Like, we heard 2-3 weeks ago, like, Tet McMillan was supposed to be the next Mike Evans, Drake London. I didn't really like those comps in the first place, but now there's so many more question marks that he didn't come out and test. Like, he has to do so much at his pro day, I think, to make up the ground that the rest of the class did. I think Egbuka, just being the route technician that he is, and the hands that he has, the product we've seen, and coming from Ohio State is a big, green light on his side. So I don't think it damaged his view in the community as much as it did for Tet.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Ibuka was actually, everyone kind of assumed he wasn't. I think the Tet thing was a surprise. What about you, Matt? How do you feel about the top 2 in this class as far as the wide receivers go, based off your model?
Muted.
I think you muted, brother.
Oh, I think for me, it's Luther Burden, it's Tet, and it depends on what happens with Trey Harris. And I know he's a little bit older, but the model really likes a lot of Trey Harris's efficiency numbers. So it'll be really interesting to see what the NFL thinks of him. Right now they're mocking out like second round draft capital for him. If he's top 40, top 50, I think that's going to be good, really good for him. But, is he going to be able to, I don't think he's going to sneak into the first round. And Mbuka's up there too. He's like fourth. So the thing with Mbuka that sort of I struggle with him is his low ADOT. He has an ADOT that's around 8.5 on a weighted basis. If you sort of take a weighted average of his last 2 years and you measure his ADOT, it comes in around 8.5. You look at all the top guys in the NFL, and I'm not even saying like top 10, but like top 20-ish, they're in this like 9 to 14 ADOT range. So he's just outside of that bottom ADOT number that I like to see. And that gives me some concern. Now, in terms of his route running, his hands, I mean, he is a technician. He comes out of, wide receiver at Ohio State or whatever. But, so like those things are definitely in his favor. But I just think he has like a ceiling that some of the other guys just maybe, you're going to get more from a Burden. You're going to get more from a Trey Harris. And yes, I was not happy that Tet didn't test. But when you look at his efficiency numbers and even if you discount for the Pac-10 and things like that, he still grades out really well. His height is a little bit of an outlier though. He is just like outside of that like height that he's almost too tall, I guess is what I'm saying. There's not a lot of guys at his height, right? You got the Mike Evans and the Drake Londons, but once you start getting that tall, it almost works against you, right? Yes, you can get up and you can contest catches and do certain things, but can you get separation and things like that? And can you demand targets at a high enough rate to really be one of those like top guys? So for Tet, it's just like, is he in like the outlier territory, with his height? And that gives me a little concern. And then with it, Mbuka, it's that ADOT, like that low ADOT just worries me that he's just going to be a great, maybe wide receiver 2 flex play. Maybe I think you can sort of plug him in there. So definite fantasy value, but just in terms of like upside, give me Burden, give me maybe Trey Harris at cost, and give me, let's see how Tet does, but probably give me Tet too.
Yeah, I'm a Burden guy through and through. I had Burden as my wide receiver 2 of this class for a really long time, and the Mbuka for me is, I think I've talked about this quite a bit, but like I watched him for a long time, and he was the medicals that I went through as a Debbie guy. I can't really get past fully, I have that PTSD when it comes to him. But he is a technician. He is somebody that is masterful coming in out of his stems, like the way that he moves, his footwork. It's like he's a ballerina out there. And his processing skills are incredible because he can see the way that the defender moves before the defender's even moving. Like he can move like he's like it's like a chessboard for him, and he's moving before the defender moves. And the manipulation there is like, it's incredible because you can see the way that he's moving. He's already anticipating. It's very anticipatory. And it's like, I don't know, that really breeds NFL wide receiver to me. So it's like, but do I love Burden's explosiveness? Do I like the way that they can play him at 3 levels of the field? He can go anywhere. He can do anything. Hell, he can be a running back if you want him to be. Like, he has that versatility. It's tough, man. It's a coin flip for me. I think it's more about value at that point than anything else. But I think Burden has a much higher ceiling and Mbuka has a safer floor. And that's just how it goes.
I think
so it's like, what do you want? You have to look at your dynasty roster and you have to assess it based off of, do you need a floor player or do you need a ceiling player? I'm always taking the ceiling player, but I'm a dude that took Treylon Burks over. I don't know who I took him over. I took him over a couple different people that I shouldn't have taken him over, but and that's how you live and die by that. Unfortunately, it's not a process thing. It's more of a, hey, what's your risk tolerance? You know, how do you feel about eating up a player's value? Are you okay with it? Then take the guy that could have the craziest ceiling in the world. And that's Burden for me.
Right.
You know, let's kick it over to Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden ran one of the fastest 40s, the fastest 40 in the combine, right? And then I guess he was always the fringe wide receiver 4 or 5 of this class. Like he was kind of like in that range of, you know, like you probably felt good about the first 3 to 4 guys. And then it was like, is Trey Harris? Is it Matthew Golden? Like, I think it's still Trey Harris for me. I think I'm still safely in on Trey Harris when it comes to his value. And I'm probably going to go Trey Harris over Matthew Golden. Is that how you feel, Matt?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I love like the athleticism and the speed of Matthew Golden, but you know, I just can't get past some of the production numbers with him. And I think when you look at just, I mean, some of his efficiency numbers again aren't that great. And again, I don't want to like live and die by those things. Like I want to think more holistically about these problems, look at the film and you know, get different opinions. But yeah, when you look at production and efficiency, Matthew Golden lacks in some of those areas, but he is super fast in a straight line, you know? So, and the NFL does value that. And if there is one metric, I think that matters, you know, a little bit, a decent amount for wide receivers, in terms of like speed, burst, and agility. I think speed, size adjusted speed in particular, has, you know, some value for wide receivers. And so 6 foot 195, and then he runs that 4.3 or
4.29.
4.29. Yeah, there you go.
He was fucking blazing. Yep.
Yeah. So you know, is he a Justin Ross type, or
you're sorry to interrupt you, but man, you're Canadian. You're so Canadian, brother. I don't think he's a Justin Ross. I don't mean to cut you off, but like,
no.
I don't see a Justin Ross, but I don't quite see. I don't know. There's a lot of holes in his game. You know, I think people are vaulting him up to a value that I can't really get behind. Like a lot of people have Matthew Golden. I saw people have Matthew Golden over Burden, over like people have him in that wide receiver 2-3 spot, you know?
Like I really think this is, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I just really think that this is one of those cases where people are double counting on a guy like Golden. And, you know, the NFL seems to love players like him. Like I've seen a little bit on Twitter, and you know, now it's crept into my mind, like he might be the first wide receiver off the board. And I don't think it's warranted.
I don't know. I think that would be pretty insane.
Same.
I don't know how you could even get behind doing that, but I think I'm comfortable as an NFL team. Look at me from my armchair at my house, like after eating a couple slices of pizza, talking about how I would value these guys. But yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with him in the second round, but throwing a first on Golden, especially being the first wide receiver off the board, feels like a mistake. But I don't know, man. You know, in the right offense, you throw him with McDaniels. The way that I could see that working out is if we see him as a McDaniels-led wide receiver 2, and then Tyreek is on a different team. That's it.
Yeah, put him there and let Waddle work underneath. I mean,
when Waddle's not in the blue tent, yeah, he'll be all right. Yeah. I don't know. I'm pretty hopeful for that offense. I need to with a, you know, man, he's got to wear that guardian cap at minimum. I feel like I want to take that guy and pick him up off the field and bring him to safety every time he's hitting the floor. And I don't know. I got a soft spot for Tua, man. I love that guy.
He needs a guardian cap. He needs a cowboy collar. He needs whatever extra equipment he can wear to stay on the field.
I agree. Yeah. But talking about quarterbacks real quick, who is your quarterback 3 in this class currently? Matt,
Go ahead, Matt.
based on your process and everything, like who do you want? I know that most people, maybe yours is pretty wacky, but obviously we're talking Cam, Shador, and then there's the coin flip of do you want Milroe or do you want Dart? Typically, this is where I'm going with it, but how do you feel?
Oh yeah, Dart would be the easy pick for me there at 3. And I even have some concerns about, at least from a fantasy perspective, if we're talking real football versus fantasy football, in some ways I like what Dart has to offer more than what Shador has to offer.
Thank you.
Just because of his athletic profile. He's much better runner. So he offers more on the ground, and he takes chances. His yards per attempt is, I think it was first in the class, which is a real, it's a good sign that this is a person who really pushes the ball down the field and really tries to drive the ball down the field. Now his arm strength and, how's that going to translate to the NFL? That'll be interesting. Cause again, I'm not a film guy, but I've heard that there are some rumblings, like, can he make those like tight window throws and stuff like that at the next level? Assuming he can, I like what he does with the football in terms of his aggressiveness more than what Shador does. And he is a better athlete. I think he's going to run more. So, in terms of fantasy football, if he can get a start, if he's going to, be a starter for a team, I think he could, possibly produce more than somebody like Shador. And then I think Cam's number 1 for me.
Yeah, I think that Dart, my biggest concern is his arm strength. I think that's really what I see in tape. I have concerns about him throwing past like 35, 40 yards. I think he's great within that range, but then I see the timing and everything, and I see a lot of Mac Jones and his long throws, and it hurts me a lot because I'm a Patriots fan and I watched that for years. So I do see that being maybe a problem in the NFL. I don't know if that concerns scouts or anything. I'm sure it does to a degree, but I agree with you on everything else. I think he provides a higher ceiling, especially when it comes to fantasy. I just sat down with Matt Waldman for an hour and a half talking about Jalen Monroe, and I can't not talk about Jalen Monroe right now because, Matt loves him. Waldman is completely in on Milroe. Like he has a type. He was very much in on Mahomes, very much in on Hurts. Obviously Anthony Richardson comes around, very much in on Anthony Richardson. Milroe is that guy in this class. He is that I have the highest ceiling, I have the lowest floor. And it's really tough, but if you can, I don't think you have to choose between these guys, unless Milroe gets a crazy landing spot and great draft capital. I don't think it's going to be are you going to take Dart over Milroe? I think you might be able to get both to a degree, but I don't know. I mean, the NFL is a wacky place. Like, I don't think I ever saw Anthony Richardson going 1 in that draft class. I did not. I don't know if you saw it, you saw it. Like, obviously I like the guy a lot and I like him as a prospect, but I don't know if you can roll the dice like that on a guy that barely played in college. Milroe doesn't have that, but he still has the same. It's the processing that really gets me. It's holding on to the ball a little bit. Matt was like very quick to remind me that some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL hold on to the ball for too long. We see like the guys that have that incredible rushing ability, they will hold on to the ball because they can make the play with their feet. And he's the only guy in this class that really offers that incredible ceiling. Like he ran for 20 touchdowns this year and over 700 yards. So it's not something I even thought about 4 hours ago, but after sitting down with a GOAT, you think about it a little more. And he opened up my eyes. I'm not saying I'm taking Milroe over Dart, but it's closer than I wanted it to be a couple hours ago. Well, before we sign off, tell me where DK Metcalf is playing next year. What do you think, Dane? Where's he going, if anywhere?
Well, if that price tag is what it is, I think he stays with the Seahawks, but I would love to see him on the Chargers. I think being a deep threat weapon for Herbert, and they can add a different element to that offense, would be a dream for fantasy.
Yeah, I'm with that. The Chargers feels good. Matt, anywhere you want to see him go?
The place I came up with was New England. Pairing him with Drake May, I think that could be pretty cool. He's not like Vrabel's AJ Brown necessarily, but it'd be the closest he could get to him. And so, but with Drake May and his his skill set, I think that could be interesting. I don't know. Same thing. I'm not sure if it's actually going to happen, but that was my place.
I mean, New England has all the draft capital in the world and all the cap space in the world. It really depends on DK Metcalf at that point. My man Vince wants him to go to Buffalo. I would love that. I mean, I don't think they can do it, but I don't know if DK has ultimate control over his landing spot. I really don't think he's the kind of dude that wants to go into a winter. Like I feel like going to New England, Buffalo doesn't fit DK.
Yeah.
it was possible to pull these guys. I mean, playing with Josh Allen or Drake May is probably something that he really would enjoy, but I don't know, man. That
Chargers makes a lot of sense. I like that. I like that place.
Chargers feels good, and you don't have a millionaire tax like they do in Massachusetts or New York.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love the Chargers. I mean, we obviously saw Kirk go over to Stroud, playing with him. There's not a lot of guys that I really care to see. Like Lockett is out there. Brandon Ayuk could get moved a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, I'm more interested in what happens in Seattle if DK gets moved, and why that becomes the sexiest rookie landing spot you can imagine, and then, if DK gets moved, is Geno still on that team too? I mean, there's a lot of fantasy implications that rely on DK right now. Cause I think if he's gone, I don't think we saw that Geno drop the guy with packing his bags and walking away from the podium. I mean, there's something to that. Like he's definitely probably looking at it like, you're going to blow the team up. I want to dip, but that becomes so desirable to me, like if they move DK and Geno leaves, does Kenneth Walker stay on that team? Like that? I mean, probably nothing is going to come of this, but like I could see that red button being pushed and that whole team blowing up. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
But Matt, you can find my man at Fantasy Fit. I'm going to remember this at one point. Fantasy Fit IO. Yep. Matt is in our Discord. If you're not in our Discord, definitely jump in. It's great. A lot of trade advice, a lot of fantasy help, startups, rookie rankings, all that good stuff you can find in there. Then it's pinned on our profile over on X. And Matt, tell everybody, can you release your method anywhere? Do you have that anywhere, or is that just in your back pocket right now?
Well, I just basically am creating different scores. So talent scores, team scores, and overall fantasy fitness scores. So it's 3 algorithms that we're working on to help sort of assess, a player's individual talent in a vacuum, their team environment, and then sort of marrying those 2 scores together to sort of arrive at this ultimate fantasy fitness score. It's out on the website at www.fantasyfitness.io. And, I'm happy to talk about the process and kind of what goes into the different algorithms and how we're trying to weight things. So, I wouldn't say it's like necessarily like the secret sauce or anything like that. I'm happy to share the method to the madness so it can get peer reviewed and can get feedback, and we can continue to tune the model so that we're getting the best results we can, in the community and, just for those that are interested.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you. You seem like you definitely have a good process, sharp mind. Definitely would love to have you back on here. As always, Dane, I appreciate you, my trusty co. I know you had a long day today, man. So go crack open some beers and go watch some tape. As I think
we'll be doing
probably, yeah, I know.
You know
All right,
it.
guys, we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.